Afternoon, ladies. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I'm just going to give it a few more minutes just to allow other people to have an opportunity to join. We should start in the next 2 or so minutes. Okay, I think it's good for us to start. So welcome to everybody who's given up a little bit of their time this afternoon to sharing some insights and some knowledge and some advice from some leading ladies in the industry. We normally like to do this face-to-face, but I suppose this is the next best thing that we can do with everything that we're going through at the moment. So let's start with a few introductions. For some of you that don't know me, I'm Katie McKnight. I'm a director at Modern Infrastructure, as well as a strategic account manager for the team. I'll be your host today, but the glory and the fame is going to some wonderful ladies that have given up their time this afternoon. They are going to give us some insights, some advice, some of their knowledge and all the things that they have gone and faced in the industry. So if I can just do a brief introduction of our ladies, I'll start with Janine. Janine is a senior BIM specialist at Worley. Janine specializes in identifying best practices and methodologies for integrating BIM into everyday workflows. She develops and oversees BIM and Revit workflows as standards. Her role as a BIM specialist included continuous staff development, user and project-based support, maintaining Revit templates and content libraries, and overseeing the implementation of BIM workflows on projects. Janine has presented at many BIM events, as well as even published her own article called Learning BIM on the Job. So welcome, Janine. Next, we have Crystal. She's a structural engineer in the built environment at Zutari. She has a BSc in architecture as well as a civil engineering degree. Crystal says that her architectural degree has given her deep appreciation for the conceptual design of buildings and the process of turning an idea into reality. So welcome, Crystal. Rachel she has joined us. Welcome, Rachel. She's the technical design lead and BIM, and BIM coordinator at Tetra South Africa. She's been a part of the interior design industry for the last 15 years. Rachel has a BTech interior design degree. She has collaborated on many multinational projects across the EMEA region, as well as working with clients all over the world. Rachel said she is passionate about all things BIM. What is BIM and how is it going to help her and her team? Feroza is a BIM consultant at Zutari. She is trained and experienced as a digital modeler who has spent more than a decade at numerous consulting engineering companies within Cape Town. She has experience ranging from drafting and site inspection to 3D modeling, BIM management, as well as project management. Feroza has also worked on both local and international projects, assisting clients to improve their workflows from concept right through to construction. She has a national diploma in management and is currently studying law part-time. Last but not least is Annika. Annika is a lead design or a technical designer at DSGN. Her focus is on the hospitality projects, but also has a background in corporate design. She has a master's degree in interior architecture, and this is where her initial exploration into Revit and BIM began. Annika is very passionate about the possibilities that BIM affords our industry, even though there are many challenges that are faced. It is her aim to create a system in Revit for the interior designs to fit into large environments of external projects and align full collaboration of spaces and information. So with that all being said, I do have a couple of questions that I'm going to go through that have been submitted from our audience. And if there's time at the end, I will open it up to the audience, everyone that's attended today, and see if there's any additional questions that you want to direct to our beautiful ladies. So without further ado, I think let's start with a nice easy one. I know all of you ladies are using Revit currently in your organizations, but maybe you could just tell us a little bit more from the AEC collection that you are using on a day-to-day basis. Janine, do you want to give us some insights?
Sure. So good afternoon, everyone. I come from an architectural background, but I'm currently working for an engineering firm, a multidisciplinary firm, and we focus mainly on mining. So we're fortunate enough to use a whole collection of different software packages from Autodesk. Currently, we are using Revit for civils and rebar, and for architecture. We're also looking into utilizing Plant 3D within the organization. We also use Inventor quite a lot. We use Vault, and we're also looking at using BIM 360 in the future for collaboration on our projects.
Thank you so much, Janine. Annika, I don't know if you've got any other insights that you want to share with us?
Hi, good afternoon. So coming from an interior background, we are mainly using Revit. Most of our office uses Revit. And about a year and a half ago, we started using BIM 360 Docs for our internal project management system for all of our documents and redlining processes, and it's actually gone very well. We actually use it for some of our clients as well. And we use Navisworks, but only for certain projects when we need to run clash detections on big hospitality projects. But that's normally controlled by the sort of architecture and structural side, but we dabble sometimes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Annika. Feroza, I know you're more of a consultant, but I don't know if you've got any insights that you can share that you've worked on all the big projects that you have seen, that what many of the consultants in the bigger companies are using.
Hi everybody, I'm actually a digital modeler / consultant. So we use mainly Revit, but we use a lot of the collection products, mainly Revit, and a lot of collaborations. So we are on BIM 360 all the time. Because we work in the Global Design Center, we're always collaborating with our other colleagues in Australia or the Middle East. So we're really big in collaboration. So BIM 360, Revit, Navisworks, and that's our main products.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Rachel, I see that we are up and running. Thank you for joining us. Welcome. I'm sorry that you missed all the introductions, but I don't know if you've got a little bit of insight. Sorry to throw you in and under the bus on what products you're using out of the AEC collection. Oh, Rachel, we can't hear you. Apologies, ladies. Let's see if we can get Rachel's sound working in a minute or two. I'll move on to another question while we sort that out. So maybe let's move into some more difficult questions about what is the future of design technology and how is the role of an architect? How is this going to change? Let's start with the architects in the room. Annika, I know that you've got a background to this.
Yeah, so for this one, it's actually, I think, for me, I obviously studied interior design. And for the last 3 years, I've actually not done a lot of sort of conceptual design work at all. Being the BIM manager at the company and a technical lead, I've sort of completely gone into the sort of technical side of things, and further than that, moved into now more BIM management and you know, sort of how the Revit system works as opposed to just the actual design. So I think it might start creating a bit of a rift between your general sort of mainstream designer and the actual technical side. I don't necessarily think you'll be able to do or be both for all projects anymore. I think it's creating a lot more specialities within our industries that never used to be quite as distinct.
Thank you, Annika. That's some great insights. Let's try Rachel again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Welcome. Thank you.
Sorry, technology is supposed to be our friend.
I know. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I'm having the same this side. So please, I'm trying to get back to the previous question, but it's basically how things have changed within the architectural industry. Do you have any insights for us on that?
I think just listening in, it's definitely a lot more specialists. You tend to need to, even from an interior design perspective, in our studio, we tend to have people who focus more on the conceptual side of the design, and then people who focus on the more technical side of the design. Although there's an intermeshing between them, you definitely have to specialize in one or the other, because our people expect, or our clients expect, such a fast turnaround with our designs at the moment that you have to literally be an expert in what you're doing. And yeah, on the industry as well, you know, you're always collaborating with clients who are you know, somewhere, not even in South Africa, somewhere in the States or in the UK, and you literally all talking to each other at the same time and having to be like on top form on your particular speciality, which makes it's a very, very different design world than it was 10 or 15 years ago. You know, gone are the days where you started a design and you went on site and you finished it and you chatted to the client. It's very much a fast-tracked pace nowadays.
And it can only get faster as time goes by. So we got to prepare ourselves for that as we head into this new changes and this new environment that we all living in.
Yeah, very much so.
I know that you've also got an architectural background. I don't know if you've got anything to add to to Annika and Rachel.
Yes, so I don't think it's just the role of the architect that's going to change. If we start looking at our tertiary institutions, they're already looking at implementing BIM training courses and workflows, and they're also doing a lot of software training. So, you know, you're not going to have guys coming out or coming directly from university anymore that are, you know, structural engineers, that's what they studied, that's the degree. You're going to have people coming out that have this whole a new mindset, looking at it from a specialist point of view, but also from a BIM and a software point of view. And I think, you know, the role of your architectural engineers, that'll always remain the same. But I think the role of a BIM manager is going to start falling away, and we're all going to be experts within that field. That's kind of how I see it going.
Thank you, Janine. Some great insight there, and a lot for us to think about and digest as things are changing. I think let's move on to the next one. How far behind do you think South Africa's construction industry is in order for us to catch up with the latest technology, things like BIM? And do you ladies think that we have the resources to implement it and move forward with it? I don't know who wants to give a stab at it first, maybe for Rosa or Rachel?
I'm happy to start off with. Yeah, I don't think we're that far behind. What I do think, I think we might be a little bit more behind in the actual construction from a BIM perspective. You know, how are the guys on site actually also reading into our BIM 360 docs as far as making issues and markups on site and on a live platform? But I do think from the design perspective, we're very much in line with what's happening in Europe and across the world, across the globe. And I think all we've got to do, a lot of the problems in South Africa lie in the fact that when you on site or in a construction platform, you need to have technology to be able to link into BIM. And we don't necessarily have people who have the access to all that technology. And then obviously you go to site, you know, do you go to site with an iPad that gets stolen? You know, that type of thing is a little bit more difficult in South Africa. But I mean, in Europe, we see people or sites having big TV screens in their site office where they're able to view the live model on BIM 360 docs. So that type of thing's happening overseas, but not so much in South Africa. And I think that's the only part where we might be slightly behind.
Absolutely. I think South Africa's got its own challenges, but I don't think it's a necessary thought that we are that far behind. We've just got challenges that are out of our control sometime. And if we can work those problems out, I think that we would be more on par with the rest of the world.
Yeah, our site managers are using docs now on site. We're creating issues using docs, and it goes directly, emails directly through to the designer, who during a site walk around or a site meeting can actually resolve a problem on site. You know, so that type of thing's already starting to happen.
Absolutely, and it can only get better from here. If we can get everybody on board, things will start moving in the right direction. For Rosa, I don't know if you've got any comments that you can add to what Rachel has said.
Yeah, sorry. So I actually agree with that. I think the construction side, it's a little bit slow-ish, but that's due to obviously resources. In terms of BIM and our office tools, I think it's company dependent. We are very lucky to be quite advanced. We've got actual 3D tools that allows us to do walkthroughs through our models. And because we work on a lot of international projects, we can do a lot of collaboration. So we literally do screen shares, we do 3D walkthroughs with our colleagues on the other side. So in terms of that, I think that we are doing very well.
Fantastic. Thank you, for Rosa.
Cool.
Crystal, anything from your side?
Well, we use BIM 360 extensively in our office here in Pretoria as well. And I think the thing that stands out is that the consultants need to influence the construction part of the industry. So if you've got a project and you inform the client up front that this is the workflow you want to be using in order to have a more efficient communication between the consulting team and the construction team, it makes it a lot easier to sell the use of a tool like BIM 360 to the client if you can show the benefits of actually using it. So we actually have a couple of projects where we're using BIM 360 for collaboration, and the current project is actually being done in Nairobi and most of it is being designed here. So it's helping a lot to be able to collaborate with the architects in Nairobi with our team here and the contractor obviously also sitting in Nairobi, to just share information on a platform like BIM 360. And we've also got another project currently here in South Africa where the contractor for mechanical design, we have subcontractors or subconsultants who take the final design and they do shop drawings and actually do the manufacturing of the pieces that fit into the mechanical design. And those subcontractors have actually jumped onto BIM 360 with us on this one particular project and are collaborating live on there. So that's something where the consultants have drawn in the subcontractors to actually work together and create an as-built model as they go through the project, rather than doing it right at the end after everything has been finalized and having that big job right at the end. They've actually incorporated it. So I think, like Rosa was saying, it depends on the company and what tools you have available and what kind of licensing and everything. Also, how much you can allow other people to join you in working on these tools. And the more we pull the contractors into all of this, the better it will be for BIM adoption in the whole of South Africa.
100% agreed. Thank you so much, Crystal. Let's go on to a more personal questions that have come through. What advice would you ladies give a young woman starting out in the industry? Let's start, Janine.
Yeah, I always think that this is such an interesting question when you get asked this. So I'm going to be frank here. If I can give anyone advice, it would be don't take nonsense. Stick to your guns. I think one of the biggest things that we do as women is we tend to second guess ourselves a lot more than men do, especially, you know, in this industry. You know, you'll find a lot of people, especially if you go, I don't know if any of you have noticed, you'll go to a meeting and the guys will walk in there with this absolute confidence when actually they don't know what they're doing. And sitting right next to them will be this woman who knows quite a bit more. She's very confident in what she does, but as soon as she's in that environment, she just panics and she starts second guessing herself. So if I can give you any advice, just go for it. You know what? Sometimes you're going to get it wrong. Sometimes you're not going to have all the answers, but who cares? That's how you learn. And yeah, just stay true to yourself and yeah, kick ass.
Yeah, I often think that women are better at the detail. I often think in people, you know, as women, we look at the bigger picture. We don't just find men in our projects tend to focus on the one thing that they are working on. And yes, they might be really strong on it, or they might be really confident about it. But we as women, we look at the bigger picture, and we look at all the details and all how things connect to each other. And I think that's one strength that we all have. And we should play on it. We should really, you know, use it as an advantage. There's, you know, the first thing as well as you're starting out in the industry is just do it. Just put in the time. Put in the time. Learn as much as you can. Go to sites. Get dirty. Get your site shoes on. Find out what it is about the industry that you're in. Don't just sit in an office, even if you are going to be drawing in an office. Understand what you need to do, and it's going to take you a very long way.
Thank you, Rachel and Janine. Annika, Crystal, Feroza, any advice that you would give to a young woman starting out?
I love those replies, by the way. Mine's very similar. It is really expose yourself to all aspects of engineering. And I know when I started out, I used to dislike sites so much. And I remember that no one used to take me serious because I used to be very short. So it takes a lot of confidence to actually say, but this is not how I drew it up, you know. And yeah, so advice, firstly, expose yourself to all aspects. And then secondly, make sure that you keep up with all the trends. There's a lot of information out there. You need to always just make sure that you are updated with what's going on. And then, yeah, build up confidence.
Thanks, Feroza. Some lovely advice there.
From my side, I would just add that it's very valuable to find a mentor and a sponsor in your company. So somebody who you can learn from a professional point of view. It doesn't have to be a woman, but obviously it's great if it is, because she can give you advice on how to further your career as a woman in the industry, but also a sponsor. So somebody who you work with really well and who gets to know your work ethic and your skill set and can actually talk you up to other people and say, this is somebody who's working with me. She can definitely help out on this project. I know she's got the skill set, because a sponsor can often further your career much faster than just having a boss that you work for instance. It's a good relationship to build up. So when you're starting out in the industry and building your network, see if you can identify somebody who will act as a mentor and somebody who will act as a sponsor for you.
Lovely advice, Crystal. Thank you so much. I think it's so important that young women do find those people and recognize them and almost latch onto them right from the beginning, and they can grow their career paths alongside these people that they admire.
Yes.
Annika, I don't know if you've got anything else you want to share, or if we can move on.
My advice would be a very, very quick one and slightly different to the others, in the sense that from a BIM perspective, and even just in your career, in your office practices, if ever you have a question or a thought to how something can be done differently, Google it. Somebody else probably has had the same thought, and there might be much better ways of doing things. I find that moving into new firms or new jobs, you often tend to get a protocol document, and this is how things should be, which is always great. But as I think Feroza said, things do change and things get updated. So make sure if you are up to date with things and you know something is outdated, don't be afraid to change. Go to somebody in your office and say, listen, this can be done better, or could we do it like this? Just don't be scared of new ideas and sharing them with people that are more senior than you.
I think often women do, especially younger women, do feel afraid to approach the more senior people in a company. So speak up, ladies. Your voice is there to be heard. Then the next question, what is considered a successful BIM implementation, and how long should this, in your opinion, take? Rachel, I can see that you are itching to give an answer.
I think it's different for every project. I think the time it takes is how long is a piece of string. I think every project is different. I think when you're considering something a successful BIM implementation, you also, you've got to think about what are the requirements of BIM for that particular project. Is it just a consolidated model where all the engineers' models, everybody's linked in and everybody's coordinated on one model? Or is it a BIM implementation where the facilities managers are using the information that is on the model to facilitate the building? So it's very, very project specific. From what we're doing at the moment, I do think we're very much in the beginning stages of BIM, where we're not going right through to facilities management yet. We tend to think of BIM as a 3D drawing with consultants linking their models and coordinating our models together. And that is, I think, is a good start. I think if we get that part right, it's the foundation of a proper successful BIM project. But it's, like I say, how long is a piece of string? BIM is such a new thing in the industry, and I don't think it's a term that people understand yet. But yeah, it's I don't even know if I've answered the question or if I've just created more. I don't know if anybody else has got anything to add.
I think it's also got a lot to do with the client on the particular project, and what their end deliverable needs to be. Because if they want a full asset management model by the end of the construction process, then your BIM implementation strategy on how you 3D model and how you actually get the information into the models becomes a lot more complex. Whereas if the contractor on site only requires PDF and DWG 2D drawings, you're not going to model in 3 dimensions everything to the minutest detail. So I think that's where something like a BIM execution plan comes in and is very valuable, because it states exactly what is required from the client side, what each consultant commits to producing, so that by the end of the project, you actually can go to the client and say, this is what we spent our BIM budget on. Here is your deliverable that you requested at the beginning. And this is the package. And I think if you can do that, if you can give the client what they wanted from the start, then that is a successful BIM implementation in whatever form it might be.
Can I add to that?
Yes, absolutely. Please go ahead, Rosa.
So that's all spot on. Just in terms of my side, so I think it's also it's obviously project dependent, and that's why I agree with that, where the BIM execution plan is very important. And also communication. Like, we take it for granted because we think, oh, the client expects certain things, but then we kind of go past that through the course of the project. So constant communication is very important while we're doing the whole BIM execution and implementation plans. And then just from a project side, it's people dependent also. So how experienced is your team? Are they willing to learn new tools, and can they maybe teach your younger or less experienced ones? So I think, yeah, the implementation is project dependent as well as people dependent.
Absolutely, Feroza. Thank you. Janine, you're the BIM consultant. Anything to add? How's the implementation been at Worley with regards to implementing BIM?
So from the mining point of view, and BIM has actually been implemented on this side a lot longer than it's been in the AEC environment. So for instance, since I've been here, I haven't seen one BIM execution plan because it's not needed. The instructions that we receive from our clients are extremely detailed as to what they want, how they want it delivered. They'll even tell you what software they want the final product to be in. Also, we've been creating 7D models now for the last couple of years. But what I have seen is when it comes to BIM implementation, you need to look at the different phases of your project and what is required at the end of that deliverable. If, for instance, in architecture, you're only doing a conceptual model, you're not going to go and detail all your elements up to a level, an LOD of like 300 or 350. You're not going to have all the information inputted in there because it's not necessary. And you know what we've seen at the end of the project when we hand over our models is the amount of unnecessary information that's been plugged in, just because people believe, you know, when it comes to BIM, it's always seen as, you know, information, you know, the more the better, etc. And that's actually not true. And if we're going to start moving forward onto creating digital twins, it's definitely become a case of less is more. And we're going to need to be very careful and very particular of the information that we plug into our models and into our systems.
Thank you, Janine. I think let's move on to the next one. We've got quite a few questions to get through. And I think I'll ask all the ladies if you could please answer just a little bit about what is the most rewarding experience in your careers so far. Let's start with Annika.
So my career so far hasn't actually been that long. It's only about 7 or 8 years so far. But BIM has definitely been a very big part of that. And for me, I think the most rewarding part was working on a particular hotel in the Middle East region, where for some projects, the consultants and us, it's very difficult to plug in and get everybody on exactly the same page that the interior just fits and it works. But we had one project where it was about 150 rooms of a luxury hotel. The public areas, the rooms, everything absolutely just fitted together. So when you opened the 3D model, we had all of the rooms, all of the architecture, all of the MEP, everything in one place, and you could literally walk around the 3D space of the hotel. And for me, that was, the hotel's still going to be built in a couple of years, so maybe if I go there, it'll be even better. But the actual BIM process just working out in such an amazing way was quite awesome.
Thank you, Annika. Crystal, Janine, anything most rewarding experiences?
Well, I've been working for even less time than that, only 3.5 years. So most of the projects I've worked on haven't actually been built yet. They are major multidisciplinary projects that are taking a while to get started. But it's been really rewarding working for a company that had an international footprint. So you can reach out to people on the other side of the world and get really interesting feedback from completely different perspectives. The one project I've been involved in over the past 3 years is in Uganda, actually, and it is a hospital that's getting designed and built there. And the architects were from Mexico. The clinical design team was from Dubai. The master planning architects were from New York, if I remember correctly, and the landscape architects were from Lebanon. So it became this global consulting team that all had to work across different time zones and different even language barriers. And it was really fascinating just to be able to work with such a diverse group of people. So I would say that's probably my most rewarding experience thus far.
Thank you, Crystal. Janine?
I think my most rewarding experience would have to be a couple of months before I resigned from the architectural firm that I was at. We had a huge project to do in Iran. It was a 5-star hotel with housing units for staff members that worked at a site just down the road. And we had 4 months to do a detailed design project. We got changes on a daily basis, and we also had an issue where we moved the flood line accidentally on our site plan. And everything was done in Revit. It was fully coordinated, and we pulled our schedules, our costing, everything from Revit. And I think the most rewarding thing was a couple of weeks after I resigned, the guy sent me an aerial image of the guys breaking ground on the site. And for me, that was, it was pretty awesome.
Rachel, you haven't commented on your most rewarding experience, and you've been in the industry for quite some time now. I'm sure you've got a number of experiences that you could share.
I was trying to think of what would be an interesting one to share. And I think from, like you say, I've been in the industry for many years, and I've actually changed careers. I studied engineering to start with and spent many years in the engineering field, doing injection mold design. And going from that into interior design, it was really interesting bringing through the knowledge of being able to model in 3D when architecture hadn't started doing it yet. Learning Revit myself, I mean, Revit was a program that somebody said, oh, here's a 3D architectural program, you know, teaching it to myself, finding out how it works, finding out how it thinks. And then from that, I mean, I've, in the last 5 years, have developed the template that Tetris is using in the South African company. That is very rewarding because it's all your thought processes, how you think things should look, how you want things to, the output to be, how you want to make your teammates' lives easier. And just seeing them learn it and experience it, and you know, new people joining the company going, oh, I always thought I'd love it, Revit to do this. I didn't know it could. You know, that is an amazing thing to hear. We now have literally, the South African template is now being developed into our EMEA template for Tetris. So we're also a multinational company, and the whole of Middle East, European, or Europe, Middle East, and Africa are going to be using the template that I've drawn and I've developed, and is my thought process. And that is just showing that, you know, you're one person, but you can really have a massive influence on your industry as well as your company abroad, which for me has been an amazing experience and an amazing thing to experience.
Thank you for that, Rachel. Some really lovely experiences you've been through. Feroza, I'm going to ask you if you've got anything to share as well with us.
I think I've got quite a few. The first one is, I remember when I just started out in BIM, or when things just migrated from AutoCAD to Revit, we had just gotten a very nice upmarket residential place in Camps Bay, and I was the modeler on that, starting it out, starting the project, having to go to site, and there was a constant process of things that needed to be followed. And I think what stood out is that, you know, the way you have it in your head and then seeing them actually build it on site. And then obviously seeing the final product and comparing it to your model. So that's been one of the most rewarding things that stands out. Just having to be part of that whole process and then seeing your final product and thinking, wow, I played a part in it. The other rewarding thing is, as a specialist, it was always nice to help clients improve their workflow and helping them move away from the 2D line flat surface into a 3D way of thinking. And also then when they see their products, it's also a wow factor. And then obviously working on international projects, larger teams, overcoming a lot of barriers and seeing how other people do things and just learning from that way of, learning the way they do things. So it's also just exposure. So it's been quite a few things that stood out so far.
I'm sure I could keep you ladies here all day with your experiences and knowledges and everything like that. So thank you for sharing. I know some difficult questions and some personal questions, but let's see another personal one. Sorry, ladies. What is the most challenging thing that you have faced in a male-dominated industry?
I can answer quite quickly, as I don't almost think that we need to think of construction or design as a male-dominated industry anymore. I think in the last even 10 years, it has become very equal across the board. But I think if you do have to look at something as a male-dominated industry or male challenge, it's maybe the fact that people, when you go to site, they do think you're not necessarily as as sure-footed or as knowledgeable, or that type of thing, more than anything else. I think from the office side of things, when you're at your computer, or as you're speaking to the client, or as you're doing coordination with engineers, there's so many things that are equal now. I don't think we need to even start thinking of ourselves having to prove ourselves as being female.
Thank you, Rachel. I tend to agree with you. Things have changed over the last couple of years, and we've got to start standing up and believing that we are as equal as the rest of the industry. I don't know if you ladies have got anything else to share with us, or if we...
Katie, I'd like to just jump in with that as well.
Please.
I agree with the fact that we should stop looking at this as a male-dominated industry. But what I've picked up is it's not about male versus female. It's not about any of that. It's really just comes back down to your personality. If I look at the experiences that I've had working in an office, sure, majority of the issues I've had has been with men, but that's also because the majority of the people in the office are men. And if I talk to any of my friends or family, regardless of the industry, law, accountants, someone with a terrible personality is just someone with a terrible personality. And I think we just need to find a way to deal with that, take a moment, take a deep breath, woosah, and just remember it's not because you're a woman, it's just because the person standing in front of you is, fill in the blank.
Thank you, Janine, and I think we can all fill in the blanks there. I'm going to we've received a question from Claire. I'm going to just read it out to everybody. How important do you feel it will be for South African AEC professionals to focus on sourcing work globally?
I can start with that possibly. I think, we've got to look at what global is. I think we all in South Africa I think most companies are working throughout sub-Saharan Africa, not just Africa, or South Africa. We all working in Nairobi, we're all working in Uganda, we're working up in Lagos, and that has almost become a norm. I think we are lucky enough that we get a lot of, because we've got 20 offices around the world, we have companies who have built offices with our sister companies, and in that way they know the type of work, they know the type of dedication they're going to get to those projects, and we're lucky that we are able to draw on that experience as well as, and we have worked on many multinational companies because of that. I think there's obviously, with BIM, we are able to also, at the moment, we are in South Africa we're doing the technical work for our sister company in the UK, actually for Autodesk's offices. So in that way, we can really bring in a revenue into South Africa, which is really good. And that is something that's like BIM is just made amazing and made able to happen.
Thank you, Rachel. Anybody else want to add to Rachel's comments or feedback to Claire?
Just from outside, we've noticed a lot. I mean, we've all gone through this pandemic now with lockdown and everything, and the hit that our local industry has taken in the entire process. Our South African offices at Zatari have been very quiet in terms of local work, but we've managed to, with our footprint in Africa, managed to get projects from East Africa, for instance, which are too big for the local offices there to handle. So to then share work across the offices for a major project in another country becomes essential, especially in times where the local industry might be suffering, especially with the current economy and everything. So I think, yes, it's important to not limit yourself to just the South African context in terms of looking for work. If you can get projects elsewhere, it's very beneficial. because it can lead to future work, etc. So that's just from my side.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Anybody else? I do have another question from Claire, leading on to the previous one. Have you had any experience working in ISO BIM standards, and do you feel this is vital to working globally?
I can jump onto that pretty quick and say yes. I mean, we're basing all of our template, the way we output information on ISO 19650. So yes, if you can do that, then you are able to cross borders a lot easier. So I would start to learn how to understand the implications of what that ISO rating is, or what the ISO information is.
I think as an industry, it's also to our benefit, wouldn't you guys agree, to actually standardize the way we work with it? Because if you have to start setting up a BIM execution plan and the processes on a project, if everybody is already used to working with ISO, it makes it so much easier than if you starting with everybody having their own little process and standards, and then trying to, as a consulting team, come together and choose one. There's going to be massive fights about, oh, but we do it this way and we do it that way. And so as an industry, we should be looking to standardize, because it's to everybody's benefit.
You know, when you've got 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 models linked together, you have to be able to know that you're all producing information in the same way.
Yes, exactly. In that hospital I was speaking about, I think we've got 15 different models that are that are linked into the same project. So it becomes quite tricky if you don't have some kind of system of how we link and how we work.
Yeah.
If I can also just jump in there and just add, from the interior side, we are generally the last consultant to be brought in. We're generally run on everybody else's execution plans and everybody else's way of working. So it's kind of like, well, this is what we're doing, you need to fit in. So we basically, for a lot of our projects, have different systems going on depending on what the consultants want. So for internally, for our workflow, we have to take how we usually work and then adapt it to a new project. And then every time we have put a team onto a new project, we have to re-explain, okay, guys, so we used to do this like this, but for this project, we have to do this. Like it starts getting very complicated. And I think internally we start seeing a lot of confused colleagues that, you know, the ones that are not completely into the BIM and kind of just are more on the technical side. It's very difficult to explain to them why you have to keep changing the way they work. So I think if we can standardize it as an industry, it'll definitely also make everybody more efficient. And yeah, your day-to-day tasks will just be better.
I agree with you, Annika. You know, that what you're saying there, I think, is probably the conversation in all of our studios. Oh, this is how we used to do it. Now we're doing it like this. And I think as we adapt that ISO standard, it'll become a standard in our offices, which we don't then have to change.
Thank you, ladies. I'm sure, and I hope, Claire, that those answered your questions. I'm going to move on to the next one, and I'm going to ask Janine if you could maybe answer this one first. Seems though you did mention that you internally are already expected and going towards a 7D BIM. How feasible do you think 5D BIM is?
So in our industry and the clients that we work with, 4D and 5D BIM are extremely important. The costing and adding the time schedule to our models is vital. One of the biggest things is, you know, every penny is accounted for by our clients, and also we are penalized for any delays. So for every day that you run over the expected end of the project or project completion, we get penalized for that. So in our industry, it is pretty much a set that every project will go through a 4D, 5D simulation. The guys are also trained and shown how to build their families and how to set up their Revit models to incorporate this. And at the end of the day, the client will receive a Navisworks automated model that will actually show the timeline of the project and the costing that goes with it. So for us, it's extremely important. And it's also something that's formed part of our workflow for the last couple of years.
Thank you, Janine. Anything else from any of the other ladies want to add?
Quick one. I agree with that. Cost estimation and timelining is very important for both the client and us. Obviously, we don't want to waste time or money. So just having that in place right at the start is going to be very beneficial for both parties.
100% agreed. Thank you, Feroza.
Yeah, we work very much with 4D BIM. Obviously, we've taken our BIM up to a 4D level with the costings. 5D, we tend to work with external project managers, and they tend to manage that side of our builds. So we don't use the 5D as much in our office at the moment.
Perfect. Thank you, ladies. Then I'll direct this maybe to you, Rachel, and Annika, if you want to give a little bit of input as well from your side. How can we drive BIM adoption in the architectural industry?
I almost think it's driving itself. I think every project, every pitch we pitch on, every project we want to try and win is always asking for a BIM, or has a BIM execution plan, or has some BIM responsibilities. So I think the industry is already asking for those items, and if you're not working with BIM in your company, you're not going to be winning those projects. So that's what I'd like to say. Yeah. If you're going to be left behind if you don't do it.
Absolutely agreed.
I think I completely agree with you, Rachel, there. And also in some countries in the world, I believe, well, certainly on some of the projects that we've worked on, it's actually local governments are actually requiring you to provide some sort of a 3D model for your projects. So I think it's not just our industry that's running it. I actually think it's a much larger thing, where local governments and municipalities and those kinds of things are actually looking for this information so that they can judge before you put up your buildings and how the whole infrastructure works in city planning. And I think it's getting a whole lot bigger than just the architectural industry. And definitely we would not have got some of the work that we got without being sort of fully Revit capable. And a lot of our stuff is also now pushing into the 4D costing side of things. And yeah, I think it's getting even bigger than our industry. I don't think we have to push any more from our side.
It might be an idea that question needs to be pushed more to the building services and the construction and the structural side of things, as opposed to the architects. I do believe that the architects are driving it and driving it down into the rest of the consulting team. Feroza, I don't know if you've got any comments on that and how it's been going?
Well, it's always been in engineering, or I feel it's always been in engineering. But again, it's also project dependent or company dependent. However, I do agree with it. If you're not going to keep up with BIM trends, and you are going to be left behind, regardless of which company you're at, whether it's interior, architectural, or engineering, because that's obviously the way the future is going. So in order to win more work, it's important to then start adopting BIM.
Agreed. Thank you. I see that we are running out of time, yes, and I've still got tons of questions, so I'm going to try and do a few more if everybody's still got a few more minutes to stay online. How would you convince a professional or a boss that is not using 3D modeling software of the advantages of going towards BIM?
Katie, I'd like to jump in on this one. So when I worked for the architectural firm, a lot of our directors were very set in their ways, and we actually still had drawing boards in the office, and everything was still done, you know, from their point of view with a pencil and a piece of paper. One of the biggest things that I learned when it comes to adopting BIM is not to use the word BIM. The other thing is, one of the things that I was asked when I was trying to implement BIM with the architects was, have you shown them the cost benefits, and have you shown them the this, and have you shown them the this? And, everyone has this whole idea of you need to have the top-down approach, so you have to have buy-in from management, and then that'll then trickle down to the staff members. And what I've seen is, yes, that does work, but to a point. You need to make sure that everybody in the company is on board. Everyone from the person doing the finances all the way to the director. And yeah, like I say, my biggest thing that I learned is don't use the word BIM because they don't understand it. And, you know, one of our directors was in a meeting and she was asked by the client, oh, do you guys implement BIM workflows? And she says, yes, we do have BIM software. We will manage. So I think the biggest thing is just educating your directors, showing them the benefits, and doing like little demos. I mean, you know, I did a quick little house. It was literally 4 walls, a couple of doors, windows, and I did a door and window schedule. And, you know, that was pretty much sold, especially when you've got guys in the drawing office saying, I'm going to need 2 weeks to do your door and window schedule. So I think these little things are important. And yeah, like I say, just stay away from the word BIM, and I think you should be okay.
I agree with you, Janine. Thank you for that input.
Yeah, I think
Anybody
also,
else? Rachel?
from our side, when we started our office, we had a lot of designers still on 2D AutoCAD, and although they could produce the work, there was a lot of mistakes that happen when you start building, because they build the design up in their head and they may not capture that correctly from an elevation to a plan. So to be able to, as we just mentioned, is that, you know, to be able to model something in 3D, that you can actually see the connections and you can see the junctions, it helps speed up the decision-making process, as well as any mistakes that are happening on site because of oversight. So from that perspective, it's that is, you know, you always do get asked the question, show me how much time is saved and how much money is saved. But through the experience of our office, through maybe a year or a year and a half of combining AutoCAD and a 3D Revit software, the management saw it straight away that it's already starting to save them money. So it's about implementation and sticking to your guns and saying, this is what we want to do. Yes, I can draw just as fast in this software as the other software, but look at what else I can give you. And I think that's the only way you can really do it, is to prove what you can do or what the software can do for it.
Thank you, Rachel. I do agree with you. We've got a question that's come through from Judith, so I'll just read it out. How do you foresee the art design side being integrated with the technical side, as in her experience, the gap is becoming greater?
Is there any way we can understand the art design side? Do you think more the conceptual design side, or is there any way of clarifying that? But I do think that people are thinking of BIM more in a technical perspective. But there's so much to do with BIM in the front end of design, with representing what a design is going to look like, Enscape walkthroughs, 3D representations of those the final product. I mean, we now compare. We actually laugh in our office sometimes. We have our post-installation photographer go in and do some photographs, and we compare them to our original 3Ds, and it's amazing to see how accurate they are, you know, and that's all just because of BIM. It's not because you know, we're trying to emulate something. We're actually documenting it, and we're building what we document. But yeah, our creative designers are using it up front very, very, very successfully.
If I can just jump in there, just to follow on with what Rachel said, we had this issue. It was a huge problem in the office. Whereas, you know, when you start modeling something in Revit, it actually looks pretty awful. It's just this, like, you know, gray block of stuff. And what we actually started doing is using a combination of elements that we actually created in Photoshop, and just playing around with our different graphic styles within the Revit workspace. We were actually able to create really stunning renderings of our floor plans, our elevations, sections, and 3D views. The other thing to note is a lot of people have this fear when it comes to implementing BIM so early in this project, because they believe everything needs to be modeled accurately to detail from day one. And what we actually started doing was we started creating a library of families that we got on BIM objects. And those actually became our placeholder families for the conceptual stage of the project. So there's like really stunning furniture pieces in there, and they look gorgeous once you've rendered them. And if not, you can, again, like I say, play around with your graphic settings within the Revit workspace. And when you start moving on and you start moving on in the process of your design to the next stages, you can then replace those families with families that have all the technical information that you need, the costing, the sizing, you know, the manufacturer, etc. So there are ways of creating really awesome conceptual models in Revit, still following a BIM workflow, but that's not going to take up hours and hours of time modeling all of these families to detail so that you can see them in your different views and in your renderings.
Thank you, Janine and Rachel. Judith, I hope that that answered your question. Maybe if we can move on to the next one on the screen. Constantly hearing about the fourth industrial revolution, and how will this affect our professions? What can one start immediately to not be caught off guard and be ahead of the curve, especially in architecture?
Yeah, and so, like, I'm not in architecture, but I think it kind of relates to all industries. Hi, yeah. I think it's like I said earlier on, constant upskilling. If you can't self-teach, then attend a class. Make sure that you learn from your colleagues, because the way things were done last year has already been changed. So in order to stay ahead of the curve, you need to always upskill. I think that's very important. And that's just like my little 2 cents in it.
Yeah, and for Rosa, just to add to what you said, you know, what you find people are doing is Google University, and Google University is absolutely phenomenal. But don't get stuck to only ever following one person. You know, spread your knowledge, or watch different people. See, you know, find out what different people are doing and how they're doing the same thing in different ways, because. Some of the things that you can see online are maybe 2, 3, 4 years old, and there's new ways of doing that. So keep on top of things, keep watching, and share. Maybe we should be sharing our information, what we've learned. You know, start posting information, things that other people can learn from. We, you know, often say that the one thing about Revit and the one thing about all sorts of BIM is that there's almost not much intellectual property anymore. You know, when you develop something, you're developing it to the benefit of everybody. You know, you pick up families that other people have used. They pick up your families. You know, it makes us all stronger. It makes our industry stronger. And it allows us to develop even better, or piggyback onto what somebody else has done and add information to that. And I think that's where this, you know, it keeps us ahead of the curve all the time, is if you're grabbing onto other people's things and enhancing it and then sharing.
Rachel, I completely, sorry, you wanna?
No. I was just going to say, I completely agree there with for example, the Google University. Most of what I learned from Revit was also self-taught and sort of Googles and videos. And one thing to just note is that people, I think you shouldn't be too nervous to just stick to like official channels of Google University or Autodesk videos, or there are loads of YouTube videos and a lot of informal, even just forums where you, as I said earlier, if you have a question, just type it in on Google and see what the forums say. In the interior side, there's a lot of things in Revit that aren't quite built for the interior. So you've got to kind of figure out some form of a way to do a workaround. And the amount of times I've found that answer on the second page of some random forum that just popped up, it's actually quite astonishing. So I would just, don't always look in the typical places. The internet is an amazing place. There's a lot of information and a lot of people who might have had a similar question. So just always check.
So what I wanted to say is I really enjoy cyber stalking. So what I've actually done is every time I've watched an Autodesk University video or I've gone to a conference and I've met someone, I immediately go online and I connect with them on LinkedIn. I stalk them on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever else there is. And what I've actually discovered is a lot of people that I've spoken to, especially from the UK, they don't share YouTube videos or anything. They primarily use their Twitter. And I'm not really a Twitter user, but that forced me to get the app on my phone. And like I say, I just stalk these people. And I have found the most incredible videos, and you know, from that you can go into their likes, who they're following, and then you go and follow someone else, and you actually find a whole lot of material that you actually don't find in your normal everyday Google search. So, you know, like you guys say, we really need to explore all the avenues possible. The other thing is, you know, these conferences, Women in BIM, the BIM conference that's held every year, although that is extremely expensive. But, you know, going to these online courses, doing these free webinars and stuff, and you'll also find, you know, as soon as you start following these guys on an international level and stuff as well, they also have a lot of free webinars and that they do, which is actually very cool. So attend as many courses as you can, conferences, YouTube, you know, and yeah, and for me, when I was learning Revit, my biggest thing was I used to set myself a goal every day. Like today, I'm going to model up this desk, or I'm going to model up this chair, and that was it. And that's what I used to sit and do.
Thanks so much, ladies. I think the key thing that has come out of that is knowledge is the most important thing. And we've got so much technology and things at our fingertips. We've just got to make sure that we use them.
Yeah, Caddy, I think it's not just knowledge. I think it's sharing knowledge. I think sharing is the way to grow. If you don't share something with somebody else, how are you gonna learn something from somebody else? So,
exactly.
you know, share your knowledge, especially within our own industries. It makes our industries better and stronger.
It certainly does. It certainly does. I see we still got some people online, so I'm going to continue with some questions as long as everybody's still available and can spare me a few more minutes. We'll move on to, what are your thoughts about the practicality of BIM in an industry where not all professionals have adopted it?
I think so. From our side, I think we're lucky enough to work on projects where most, like I say, you know, if you're not BIM savvy, or if you don't have BIM in your company, you almost don't win those projects. So we're lucky enough to work with people and work with professional teams that are doing the same thing. But yeah, so I think that is one fantastic thing from our company. There are still, you know, we do have some of our suppliers and some of our consultants and maybe some joiners or shop fitting companies who don't have it. But the thing is, every time they deal with us, they are getting more and more involved in the situation as well, or involved in BIM, and they see the advantages of it as well. So I think it's just, once again, it's a community that as you start doing things, it almost grows on its own. It's because it helps you in your workflow. Other people see the benefit of that, and then they start to adopt it themselves.
Anybody else want to add to what Rachel has said? I think that she sums it up pretty well in terms of how the industry is and how things are working. What are the key challenges and pain points do you face in sharing data with other disciplines? A little bit more complex.
I'm having a chuckle to myself because I'm so tired of people saying, "Can you send me a DWG?"
So true.
I think we all know what that feels like. Often you still have companies where you're all working, or you may be working on a project, and you have a project manager who doesn't quite understand what BIM is about, and they insist on getting a DWG file, and you end up sharing a DWG file with a company that's on BIM, and doesn't want a DWG file. So I think that is one of the biggest challenges, is that some of the people, some of the companies aren't necessarily understanding what BIM is and how the professional teams can work with it. You know, they think you have to sit around a table with a whole lot of PDFs to coordinate a project still, where you don't. You know, we're working on live models.
If I may jump in here quickly, it was actually
Absolutely.
quite interesting coming from the architectural background and then studying engineering to see the different information that is required from the different disciplines. The project that we're working on at the moment is exactly this issue that you just mentioned, Rachel, that we actually need the DWGs from the architects because they are working on ArchiCAD and not all of their information exports to the IFC that they're sending to us. So for our HVAC team, they require like the room IDs and everything in order to do their design effectively in Revit. And that information doesn't translate for whatever reason in the IFC that they're sending us. So from that point of view, we've been begging them to send us the DWGs just to basically load into another Revit model as a host model and then work from that. And it is painful to have to work with that workflow. Just because there's certain data, there's certain information that our team requires that isn't being shared in the general 3D model. And I think that's something that our industry, between the different consulting teams, actually needs to improve, is to understand what each engineering discipline requires. Like ceiling layouts, for instance, the levels of your ceilings, all of that, you can't do an electrical design until you've got all of that information. So until it's finalized, there's no point in asking the electrical engineer for his lighting layout because he can't actually give it to you. Same thing for the HVAC. If you don't have occupancy room IDs and the occupancy information and like how many people are actually going to be using the space, they can't do their design effectively. And so just even sharing that information and understanding which consultant needs what type of information can help the whole BIM process to run more smoothly. And so that is a major challenge that we are currently dealing with in our office. And to the point that we've actually gotten the architect to buy a version of Revit so that when they export from ArchiCAD, they can actually look at what it looks like before they send it to us. So that, yeah, it's quite interesting, the different pain points and challenges that you face depending on the team that you work with, the project that you work on, and the software that the different teams are working with. Yeah.
I think a lot of that's going to definitely come down to how your BIM execution plan has been set up. You know, we've had these types of challenges as well. We worked with, I think they were fire engineers that were very new to Revit, and they literally did everything in 2D. So when we linked their Revit model in to do clash detection, I mean, obviously, first of all, you know, my heart skipped a beat when I got this Revit model, and I thought, oh my gosh, you know, this is awesome. And then when I linked it in, I saw that everything's been done in 2D. So I think this is where we need to be very clear within our BIM execution plan who requires what from which discipline, and also how that information is going to be handled. Like, for instance, when I give my model over to the MEP guys, they will copy monitor my grids, my levels, you know, that kind of thing. So, you know, again, you know, like we've said on a lot of the questions that have been asked in this conversation, is communication. Communication between the teams and the disciplines is key.
Yes, definitely, I agree. It's also quite interesting how, especially for some of the MEP services, their budgets on the project determine a lot in terms of how detailed they model, because a lot of the guys in our company, for instance, are a little bit older in the fire team here in our office, and so their Revit skills aren't necessarily up to scratch of somebody younger coming into the industry, learning Revit, trying to do new things. And So they end up modeling in 2D because their argument is sort of, well, we issue only 2D information anyway. And so when you do try to do a clash detection, you link it in and you realize it's completely out of position, or it's just clashing with everything. And you go and speak to them and they say, well, we're out of budget. We've used up all of our budget. We can't change it. It's just going to have to be fixed on site. And it's a nightmare to have to work with that kind of mindset when you're working in a BIM coordinated model. And then to have to go to the client and say, well, we've got a little bit of a challenge with the one team on site. It's not, it's not great to have to do that. So I know that a lot of it has to do with what is in the BIM execution plan, but sometimes it also just comes down to budget on a project and what they are willing and not willing to do within that budget.
Thank you, ladies. I've got a question that's come through from Janine. Interiors and MEP, there's always a battle. What advice do you guys have on workflows between especially electrical and mechanical and their interiors? We have ended up using their PDFs as the items are not included in the model. What workflow advice do you have?
So
Yeah,
I might just,
I can, oh, sorry, Annika.
no, I was going to jump in there because I think that Janine is the same one that one of my colleagues. And just to say that we often end up in the situation, and we also end up with, as you said, Crystal, the sort of models where they send us a Revit, but it's actually full of 2D stuff. And then some of it's on PDF, some of it's on DWG, and some of it's in Revit. And you actually just cannot coordinate any of it.
From our side, when we're building or working on new buildings, we often are working at the same time as the engineers. So once again, we're lucky enough to get their models, 3D models in Revit. And that is incredibly helpful. But we still do have those situations where we have 2D CAD that is issued to us, where we would obviously link the CAD. In those cases, all we can do is coordinate on almost around a table on a PDF and make sure that there's no clashes, and trying to get information back to them to be able to move certain items. But we do, when people aren't on the same systems or somehow building in 3D, we do often have to go to site and move ceilings and lower air conditioners and see if you can move a fan coil unit because it's clashing with something else. Or so you do have those problems. But I think the further we get into BIM and the industry, the more we're going to have people doing everything in 3 dimensions.
So with that, I was actually exposed to a very interesting situation, and I can't remember if it was when I was working at Modena or if it was when I was working at an architectural firm. But what they had actually done was every 6 months, the architectural students need to do, well, for 6 months, the architectural students need to do their practical training. So then they leave university and they go work in an office. And what the guys were doing was they were actually lending their students out to the MEP consultants to actually sit in their office and model up the 3D of their designs. So it wasn't anything complex. They got the drawings from the engineer and they literally just created little blocks to represent all the different pieces of equipment. They drew the ducting, etc. And that was actually what was being used in the federated model.
Clever idea.
Yeah, so I mean, cheap labor, students are learning, and at the end of the day, everyone benefits because we've got 3D models. So, I'm very pro having students in the office. It's a great exposure for them, especially to sit and build Revit families or whatever. And I think, I thought it was quite an interesting idea that they were willing to loan out one of their students so that we could just get all the information in 3D and back into our federated model.
Yeah. I think what you've mentioned there is something that I often say as well is, and we alluded it to earlier, with the fire engineers often being a little bit older, or you have experience that can't use the program, and then you have youth that knows the program but has no experience. And what we have to do is somehow mesh those together so that we have output of information that is accurate and drawn correctly.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
And, you know, it's such a great experience for everyone involved. You know, the older generation can then mentor and they can pass on their knowledge and their experience. And the younger generation having that tech savvy, you know, way of working, etc., they can then learn from these guys that have been in the industry for years. I mean, it's really valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thanks, ladies. I think we've got 2 more questions, so we can go through them quite quickly. What would your career advice be to your younger self? If you're not the most technical or software literate, would you advise to rather pursue another path, or are there other areas of BIM that one can lead?
Well, I'm going to jump in again. When I was at school, and even first time around university, I was not a computer person. I didn't like computers. I didn't think they were going to be part of my life. I was very arty. I was a very hands-on person. I wanted to create things. And my life now is 100% all about technology. So it's don't be scared to learn stuff. Don't be scared to embrace something just because it's almost contradictory to what you love doing. You can mesh the 2 things together. And if you don't embrace technology, I think no matter what field you're in, you're going to be left behind. From art right through to engineering, right through to the manufacturing industry. You know, industrial designers used to make things with clay. Now they model things in 3D on computers. It still has its creative side. So you just have to start embracing it. I mean, we all use our phones. Our phone is technology. If you can use your phone, you can model in 3D.
I love the advice, Rachel. Thank you.
Can I go? Yeah, that's Rachel. I totally agree with that. I love it. I think my advice would be change is the only constant. If I think back to where I started out on a drawing board to now doing 3D models, like I would have never thought things would change that much. And BIM has a lot of different areas. Like I always wanted to teach, and BIM wasn't, or drafting, or you know, being in engineering was never really in my vision. And I like that BIM has allowed me not just to pursue the technological side, but also to train. So I spent a part of my career training, and so it kind of has like the teaching part also. So yeah, it's just change, just always be open to adapt.
I think the other thing is, you know, you need to make it fun for yourself. When I started my very first year of varsity, I studied veterinary biology, and then I realized that, you know, that wasn't for me. I'm not a book smart person. And then when I moved over onto architecture, I was like, oh gosh, I can't draw to save my life. And, you know, if I look at my career, I've been a architectural draftsman, I've been a graphic designer, I've been a trainer, I've been a BIM manager, my job title now is BIM specialist. And I think the biggest thing is just go with the flow, have fun with it. And, you know, when I first started using Revit, I did everything in 2D. I used Revit like AutoCAD. I hate to admit it, but I did. And, you know, when it comes to technology as well, I was terrified of a computer because I was always sure I was going to break something. And I did on numerous occasions. But that's how you learn. And, you know, sometimes you do these things and it's so daunting and you think I'm going to look like such an idiot, but you know, the person sitting next to you is going through exactly the same thing. And, you know, like you say, change is the only constant. And I think the best thing is just to embrace it and go with the flow and, you know, make the most of it.
Thanks, ladies. Some solid advice there. This is maybe a little bit more of a technical or in-depth discussion, but maybe we can just touch on it briefly. What's the best way to keep track of progress on documentation, especially design output?
I'm trying to think about a way to explain this which doesn't become an administrative role. I think our output almost speaks for itself. If you compare what we used to present on a project 5-10 years ago compared to what we are doing now, every single thing we do has more information embedded in it. I think it's the only way to think about it. If you want to try and keep a log of things, you're going to be forever adding and logging and changing because the industry changes that fast. But the expectations are that it changes that fast. So I don't know if to track documentation or track changes and progress is the way to do it. Once again, I think about a telephone. If you think about the old phones that were out, do we ever think, oh, our old phone didn't have, or it didn't have this, we didn't say what it used to have. We just accept the next generation of technology, and we work with it, and then we learn from it, and we add more to it. And I think that's just the way this is gonna go as well.
I understand this question a little bit differently. I don't know. I immediately jumped to how do we track it on a project, like your progress of the documentation that you're producing. I don't know if, yeah, maybe I'm just understanding it differently, but it's been fascinating to me to see the development in BIM 360 in terms of its capability of tracking changes and being able to compare different model versions. For instance, it helps a lot if we as the engineers get a model from the architect and we can just upload it to BIM 360, look at the changes that have been made to know, okay, where does it affect our structural design, for instance. It's a really great tool just to keep track of changes that are being made during the whole work in progress stage of the project while everything is happening. Also, if the mechanical ducts are moving around, then we need to provide the penetrations through our slabs. So doing a quick online clash detection using the model coordination module on BIM 360 just gives you that quick check. Okay, is the penetration still in the right place, or do we need to move it? All of those little things allow you to keep track of the design output from the other disciplines in a way that's all centered on one common data environment. And to me, that's one of the benefits of using a tool like BIM 360 on a project for all of the different disciplines together, is to actually keep track of these changes and the progress. Because otherwise, relying on a change log that doesn't get updated, an Excel sheet that's got, oh, revision 1, oh yes, we updated these column positions, but they don't mention the 5 other things that they've changed. And you sort of stumble across it in the model 5 weeks later and realize it's had a major effect on the structural design, for argument's sake, that interrupts the flow of the BIM workflow. So being able to track progress is really important for change management. Yeah.
So I kind of read the question in a third way.
I love it, ladies. Keeping it interesting.
Multitask.
Yeah. So obviously the BIM 360, the change detection and the clashing and everything like that, that's really, really helpful. We had that column situation pop up recently in a project, like about a week before we had to issue for tender, was a big problem. But so for us, one of the things of the progress with the documentation kind of leads back to that thing about convincing your bosses about BIM and the whole lot, in that when they say to us, okay, how far are we? We say, okay, well, we've modeled all the guest rooms. Okay, but what does that mean? Like, are they on sheets? Have you annotated? Like, what does that mean? What can I give the client? So for us, we are, I say this in my free time, which I have so much of, I'm sort of working with actually one of the Moderna consultants to try and see if we can write some form of a parameter to put on our sheets that we can possibly try use Dynamo to export to Excel and come up with some sort of a graph system that we can give our boss at the end of each stage, whatever, and say, we've done so many drawings. This is like an SD layer of information. This is how far we are. And I mean, Excel, it's not that hard to manipulate the data once you have it in Excel. And if you've issued your sheets, somewhere in Revit, we're putting this information in. So I'm trying to come up with a system where Revit kind of spits out, okay, we're this far. We've done SD, we're this far. It's not really 3D related, but it's more internal sort of people that are not on the model for them to understand how far the documentation process has got. So I think it's a bit out there at the moment because the tools are not that easy to use, but it's kind of something that we would like to work on so that you can share with the rest of your office and maybe your costing department in terms of timelines and teams and how many people do you need when, you know, to kind of put together some of that information, because I feel like Revit is not just about the construction and the actual model, but it should be more about your workflows and internally in your company. How are you working? How can you be more efficient? And I feel like tracking the progress of your documentations should also be a big part of that. So if I ever get it to work, I'll maybe share, but we'll get there one day, hopefully.
Annika, I read the question the same way that you did, and I was also actually developing something like that, and I actually got quite close to it in terms of we had a checklist of what needed to be on our drawings at what stage, so dimensions, tags, room names, etc. And then, you know, with your room name at conceptual stage, it's just the room name, later on it's the room name, the area, floor finish. And I'd actually created Dynamo scripts that'll take each view and run through the elements that have been placed in that view. So okay, the tags have been placed, these are the tags, this is the information that it's reading, and then compare that to our progress report that I had created based on where we should be with each submission, and then use that to track the percentage that the documentation's at.
Okay, so you've got, yeah, a lot further than I've got, but that's exactly the kind of thing that I was thinking to get at. I think that just helps designers and companies work better.
It's funny
Yeah,
that,
and it's also efficient.
yeah, sorry, 4 of us on, or 5 of us on the panel, and 3 of us are all doing the same thing or have been and trying. So these are the things where I say sharing is caring. I mean, we could all be adding valuable insights and parts of that whole system to form one system that does work. Because we've been doing exactly the same thing. So it's almost like we all want to, it's all in-house stuff, but it should be out there in the industry that so-and-so is developing this, and you can, or, you know, maybe it's on a public forum, on a GitHub type thing, or somewhere where somebody can add to it. And possibly we should look at doing that as an industry.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, it comes down to families as well. You know, what my guys used to do is, I mean, they used to take models that we received from our consultants and just, you know, save out all their families and stash it somewhere. But, I mean, if I'm sitting creating a library with all the vol fittings, for instance, and you're sitting doing the exact same thing, you know, we're both spending hours building the exact same model when we could just have one person doing it and sharing it. And then you could be working on families for, you know, aluminium windows, and then share that with me. And, you know, it really does come down to this whole issue. And I find it especially with the architects, this whole thing of IP. And the other thing is, who owns that family that you've created? Because I've built it based on the specs that I received from Vol. So does that family actually then belong to Vol? Does it belong to me? Does it belong to my company? You know, and that's something we really need to look at as an industry. And because honestly, if I can find that family somewhere else, I'm going to use it from somewhere else, and it's going to save me a lot of time in the long run. And that's how we should be looking at it, working efficiently. And, you know, that'll also help us having more I don't want to be funny or anything, but at least then, you know, we know that the families that we receive have been built correctly by professionals that know what they're doing, rather than downloading some dodgy family, you know, off the internet that comes with viruses and you don't understand the parameters. And, you know, so it's definitely something that we need to start looking at as an industry.
Something we're doing, Janine, and it's because of, once again, our global footprint, is we from the interiors perspective, deal with a lot of furniture suppliers and a lot of the big name furniture suppliers. And they have fantastic families, but they're very heavy. They build them for their own benefit. So they build it for their ordering with every nut and every bolt and every screw. And when you've got 300-400 of this type of chair and some, you know, it makes your models too heavy and too large. And we've actually got them developing their families in the information or the level of detail that we want, so that our models are lighter, you know, and yes, we can change fabrics and colors, but only the information we need to change. So we're developing that already, purely because of necessity. I mean, it's a case of, do you know, to take families off the internet, it comes with so much rubbish and stuff that hangs your projects up. And then also, especially when you're working in live BIM, you have other people who, you know, you may have used something as a placeholder and it has information embedded in it that you don't know. So unless you've cleaned that up, you know, other people are going, oh, that's this thing, and they start using that information. So we've got to be very careful about that type of thing, and you know, with especially.
No, but exactly. I don't know if you guys have ever come across a platform. I stand corrected. I can't actually remember what it was called, but I think it was the BIM Bible or BIM Bible Tools or something along those lines. And it was actually such an incredible idea. What it is it's a platform where they have a set of family modeling workflows. You have to abide by these workflows. It tells you exactly how to set up your family, how to name your parameters, how to set up your dimensions, etc. And what it is you go and create an account, and every time you upload a model that you've created based on those standards, you almost get like credits, and you can then go and download other models from that site. So, you know, instead of becoming like a paid family that you have to purchase from the manufacturer or the consultant, or, you know, you have to steal it from someone else's model, you can actually go into the site, and the more you contribute, the more you can take. And I thought that was such an incredible initiative because, you know, it forces you to actually sit down and start creating families. And then it also gives you the opportunity to have access to all these different families and stuff as well.
Yeah. I think families is a difficult one because every company has different workflows and different regulations about families, and you need different parameters in. I mean, we already, you know, writing scripts to put the parameters that we particularly want onto our families or any families that are brought into our systems. So, but it's very difficult to trust a family that other people have created. So that type of thing would be amazing. You know,
I mean, you know, that's where, you know, that's where this whole thing comes in of, you know, that there's a certain workflow that you need to follow. Also, once your family's been published, it actually goes through a checking process first. So nothing actually gets published on the site, or nothing's actually made available until those elements have been checked. So, you know, but I mean, it's true, like you say, for some companies, you know, costing will be more important than the material. And so we kind of have to get to a point where all the bases are covered. And if that information is not available at the time, there needs to at least be provision made for a parameter that you can then input later if needed.
Yeah, and I think also from us, we need to put pressure onto our suppliers as well to say, we need families. We need your families to say this. We need it to be clean. We need it to be light. We need it to work in a certain way. And we have in the industry, we have enough, I want to say, clout to actually like insist on it. You know, there's a lot of us out there, and if we're all using the same families, we know that the aluminium guys in South Africa produce certain extrusions, and yet we still use families of windows that are from America, and we just use them as placeholders, but they're not quite right. I think it's one of the downfalls of drawing in 3D is that people take shortcuts just to create a result, rather than drawing things correctly with the right information.
Thanks, ladies. Some really, really insights and valuable input. this is our last question, and there's a few of you on the panel and in the audience as well. I am going to say this question is from Michiel. A lot of you have worked with him. So he wants to know from our beautiful ladies, are you perceived differently within your firm, especially since you are more tech savvy or geeky when it comes to the software?
I know in my company they call me Black Magic Woman. So they always say, how do I know all this black magic on our software? So it's just about you just get in there, understand stuff, don't worry about what people think about you, and the more you can help people, the better it is.
I think I have to agree there. Same sort of situation in my office. People always, how do you know this? How do you remember that? It's more of a, maybe something as a piece of advice I could give, more about understanding the software than remembering everything. If you understand how the software works and what you want from the software, you don't need to remember everything it can do. You just need to know where to look for what you're trying to do. That's kind of the advice that I give. It doesn't always work, but yeah, being the geek is not the end of the world either.
I actually love being called geeky. Yeah, I don't think we perceive differently, but it is like the other two said, you need to know how. You don't need to know how to do everything, but as long as you understand it, and there's always a way to find out. So if you know where to find the buttons, or you know how to, there's a way to find it. Also, there's always Google. So if all else fails, somebody have done it before, and you can just pull out their resources.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like what Richard Branson says, just say yes and go figure it out later.
I love that. Okay, ladies, I think we've come to the end of our very long session, and I'm so sorry for keeping everybody for longer than I promised, but I think it was a really good session. I think there's been some valuable insights, some experiences, some advice, some guidance to everybody on the line. So I just want to say thank you for giving up your time again. For everybody who attended and stayed on for the extra almost hour, I really do appreciate it. If there's no other questions, we can close off now. Please, feel free to get in touch with either myself or any of our Modernist staff. We're here to work with you. We're here to assist you. We're here to grow with you and just move forward together as a unified partnership. So ladies, thank you once again. Have a fantastic Friday afternoon and the rest of the weekend ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for the opportunity as well. It's I do miss the fact that we normally have breakfast while we do this.
I know.
Maybe next year we'll be able to do it again. I think it's really nice to connect with other women in the industry. I think we should do it more often.
Absolutely, Rachel. Thank you so much for your time. And I do agree, face-to-face would have been better. But this was the next best thing, that we can at least spend an afternoon chatting with some lovely ladies and experiences. So let's hope for the best for next year. Maybe we do more of them and not just keep it to once a year.
That's great. Thanks. Look forward to it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Katie. And Katie, if we are going to do it again, can we do it late in the afternoon and have wine instead of coffee?
Now you're talking. I agree with you, Janine. You'll do that.
There we go.
Wonderful. Ladies, thank you very much. Have a fantastic weekend, afternoon. Everybody enjoy.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.